I used to think I knew my wife completely. 8 years of marriage creates a certain rhythm, doesn't it? You learn the sound of her footsteps on the stairs, the way she hums while making coffee, how she tilts her head when she's really listening. You build a life together, brick by brick, assumption by assumption. Jessica was my constant, the devoted stay-at-home mom who made our house a home, while I played the reliable provider everyone respected in our quiet suburban circle. That Saturday evening at Tom and Sarah's felt like any other dinner party. The same faces around the same mahogany table, the same conversations about property values and school districts, the same expensive wine that made everyone a little too comfortable. Jessica looked radiant in her navy dress, laughing at Tom's terrible jokes, helping Sarah clear the appetizer plates. She fit perfectly into our world, or so I thought. The evening took its predictable turn after dessert. Tom broke out the whiskey, Sarah dimmed the lights, and someone suggested we play that game couples play when they've had too much to drink. You know the one, Celebrity Hall Pass, the hypothetical freebie, the fantasy that's supposed to be harmless because it's impossible. Come on, it's just for fun, Sarah giggled, refilling wine glasses that didn't need refilling. Everyone gets one. If you could sleep with any celebrity, no consequences, who would it be? The other wives squealed with delight. I watched their husbands exchange glances, that universal look men share when their wives are about to embarrass them. But we all played along because that's what you do. You laugh, you participate. You trust that your spouse understands the boundaries. The wives went first, of course. Sarah picked some British actor I'd never heard of. Lisa chose a pop star 20 years younger than her husband. They were giggly, theatrical, obviously playing up the fantasy for laughs. I relaxed slightly, thinking this would blow over quickly. Then Jessica's turn came. "Oh, that's easy," she said, her voice suddenly different, focused. Ryan Sterling, the action star, the guy who'd been on every magazine cover that year promoting his latest blockbuster. I knew Jessica found him attractive, what woman didn't? But hearing her say his name with such certainty made something twist in my stomach. "God, yes," she continued, and I watched in growing discomfort as she leaned back in her chair, eyes distant. "Have you seen those arms? And those scenes where he's shirtless?" She paused, running her tongue across her lower lip. "I mean the things I would do to that man." The room went quiet for a heartbeat too long. The other wives stared at her with surprise, even admiration. Their fantasies had been innocent, almost childlike. Jessica's felt different, real. Okay? Tom laughed nervously, but it sounded forced. Moving on to the guys. I barely heard the rest of the conversation. While the men made their obligatory picks, actresses we'd never meet, models from magazines, I kept watching Jessica. She wasn't participating anymore, just smiling to herself, like she was replaying private thoughts. When I caught her eye, she winked at me, completely oblivious to my discomfort. The drive home was tense. Our neighborhood streets blurred past in darkness while I tried to find the right words. "That was intense tonight," I finally said. "What was?" Jessica was checking her makeup in the passenger mirror, still glowing from the attention. "The way you talked about that actor." "Ryan Sterling," I replied. She laughed, not the warm laugh I'd fallen in love with, but something dismissive, cold. "Relax, Mark, it's just a game." "It doesn't mean anything," she said. But the way she described what she wanted to do to him, the hunger in her voice, the detail in her fantasies, it had felt like everything. Like a window into thoughts I wasn't supposed to see. "I know, but—" I started. "But what? Are you jealous of a man I'll never meet?" She interrupted, turning to face me fully now, and I could see irritation creeping into her expression. "It's called fantasy, Mark. Everyone has them." I wanted to explain that it wasn't the fantasy that bothered me. It was how eager she'd been to share it, how real she'd made it sound, how little she seemed to care about my feelings. But Jessica had already turned back to the mirror, the conversation clearly over in her mind. As we pulled into our driveway, she grabbed my hand and squeezed it, her mood shifting again. "Oh, I almost forgot to tell you," she said brightly. "I bought concert tickets for next month. Sarah and I are going to see Crimson Thunder. You know, Ryan Sterling's band. Apparently he does a few songs with them sometimes." She kissed my cheek and headed for the house. "Won't that be fun?" I sat in the car long after she'd gone inside, staring at our house, our perfect house in our perfect neighborhood with our perfect life, and feeling like something fundamental had just shifted beneath my feet. "It's just a game," she'd said. But as I watched the bedroom light come on upstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica had just told me exactly what she'd do if given the chance. And worse, that she was already making sure she'd have that chance. The game, I was beginning to realize, might just be getting started. 3 weeks. That's how long Jessica's words echoed in my head like a poison I couldn't purge. It's just a game. It doesn't mean anything, but everything began to mean something once you started paying attention. The way Jessica's face lit up whenever Ryan Sterling appeared on entertainment shows. How she'd suddenly developed an interest in fitness, buying new workout clothes, spending longer at the gym. The Victoria's Secret bag she brought home for herself, even though our intimacy had become perfunctory at best. "I'm just taking better care of myself," she'd say whenever I commented on the changes. Is that a crime? I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, jealous, controlling, all the things Jessica accused me of whenever I brought up my concerns. But the doubt had taken root, growing like a tumor behind my ribs, making it hard to breathe normally around her. The night of the concert arrived with November rain and an anxiety that felt like swallowing glass. Jessica spent 2 hours getting ready, hair, makeup, outfit changes. She looked stunning, I'll admit that. She looked like a woman preparing for the most important night of her life. "Don't wait up," she called from the hallway, checking herself one final time in the mirror. "Sarah says the after-parties go really late." After-parties. She'd never mentioned after-parties before. "Maybe I should come with you," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Jessica's reflection froze. When she turned to face me, her expression was carefully controlled. The look she gave our daughter when explaining why she couldn't have ice cream for breakfast. "Mark, it's a girls' night," she replied. "You hate crowds, you hate loud music, and you definitely hate Sarah when she's drunk." She softened slightly, walking over to kiss my forehead. "Stay home, order pizza, watch your documentaries. We'll both have more fun this way." She was right, of course, about everything except the part where we'd both have fun. I tried to distract myself after she left. Paid bills, organized files, attempted to focus on a client proposal that kept blurring on my laptop screen, but the anxiety was a living thing now, pacing inside my chest like a caged animal. I found myself checking my phone every few minutes, though I wasn't sure what I was looking for. By 11 o'clock, I'd given up pretending to work. I sat in our living room, our carefully decorated living room with photos of our wedding, our vacations, our supposedly happy life, and waited. For what? I wasn't entirely sure. At 11:47 p.m., my phone rang. Jessica's name lit up the screen, and I felt a moment of relief. She was calling to check in, maybe to complain about the music being too loud or Sarah being too drunk. Normal wife things. "Hey," I answered. "How's the concert?" The voice that came through the phone wasn't my wife's. Not really. It was higher, breathless, giddy in a way that made my skin crawl. "Mark! Oh my God, Mark, you're not going to believe this!" she screamed. The background noise was overwhelming. Music, shouting, laughter that sounded dangerous. Jessica was drunk. Very drunk. "Where are you?" I asked, but she was talking over me. "He's here. I can't believe it, but he's actually here. At the after-party!" She was practically shrieking with excitement. "Ryan Sterling. He's even more gorgeous in person, and Mark, I'm taking my hall pass." The world tilted sideways. I gripped the phone so hard I thought it might crack. "Jessica, no, that was a game. I never gave you a hall pass," I protested. Her laugh was unlike anything I'd ever heard from her. Cruel and dismissive and completely unrecognizable. "You didn't say no, so that's a yes. That's how consent works, right?" she shouted, competing with the music. "God, he smells incredible. I can't believe this is happening." I could hear other voices in the background. Sarah, I think, saying something about being careful. But Jessica wasn't listening to her, and she certainly wasn't listening to me. "Jessica, please, think about what you're doing. Think about us, about Emma," I pleaded. "Oh, don't be such a prude, Mark. It's one night. One perfect night with the most beautiful man I've ever seen." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt more violent than shouting. "I'm going to have a very, very good night. So don't wait up." The line went dead. I sat there in our silent house, staring at the phone screen, feeling like I'd been physically struck. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of trust, of shared dreams, of building a life together. A daughter who was sleeping peacefully upstairs, trusting that her parents loved each other and would always keep her. Safe, gone. Destroyed by a drunk phone call and a woman who thought consent was something you could retroactively manufacture. The woman I'd married wouldn't have done this. The Jessica I fell in love with would have hung up on me, rushed home, apologized for even joking about such a thing. But that Jessica had apparently died 3 weeks ago at a dinner party, replaced by this stranger who licked her lips while describing what she'd do to another man. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the house to feel like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Long enough to understand that some betrayals can't be forgiven, only answered. When I finally moved, it was with a clarity that surprised me. I picked up my phone and dialed David Cox, my lawyer, fully aware that it was nearly 1 in the morning. "This better be life or death, Mark." David's voice was groggy, annoyed. "It's death," I said. "The death of my marriage. I need to file for divorce, and I need to do it right." There was a pause, the kind that meant David was fully awake now. "What happened?" he asked. I told him everything. The dinner party, the fantasies, tonight's phone call. When I finished, David was quiet for a long moment. "Adultery's hard to prove in court these days," he finally said, "and expensive to fight. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" "I want her to lose everything, David. The house, the savings, custody of Emma. I want her to understand that actions have consequences," I replied firmly. "That's going to cost you a fortune in legal fees. And there's no guarantee," he warned. "I don't care about the money," I interrupted. Another pause. When David spoke again, there was something different in his voice, something that sounded almost like anticipation. "Well," he said, "if you don't care about the money, there are other ways to make her pay, ways that don't require a judge to believe your story." For the first time all night, I smiled. "Tell me everything," I said. Sleep was for people whose worlds hadn't just ended at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Instead, I spent the next 6 hours orchestrating Jessica's complete destruction with the methodical precision that made me good at my job. 8 years as a certified public accountant meant I knew exactly where every document lived, every account balance, every asset we'd accumulated together. More importantly, I knew how to protect myself legally while ensuring she lost everything. David had been thorough during our late-night strategy session. "You need to act fast," he'd said, "before she realizes what's happening, before she can hide assets or claim she was drunk and didn't mean it. Strike while she's still basking in her victory." The first call went to Peterson Security Locksmiths at 6 a.m. sharp. I explained it was an emergency. My wife had lost her keys and I needed the house rekeyed immediately. "We can be there by 8 a.m. "Sir," the dispatcher confirmed. While I waited, I methodically photographed every room, every piece of furniture, every item of value. Evidence for the divorce proceedings, but more importantly, insurance that she couldn't later claim I'd stolen or damaged her belongings. At 7 a.m., I called Elite Moving Services and paid triple their normal rate for same-day service. Money well spent to ensure Jessica's belongings would be gone before she stumbled home with her guilt and regret. And whatever pathetic explanations she'd invented. "We need everything that belongs to a woman packed and removed." I told the dispatcher. "What about shared items, sir? Wedding gifts, that sort of thing?" she asked. "If she picked it out, if she used it, if she so much as looked at it fondly, it goes," I answered. The locksmiths arrived exactly on time. 2 efficient men who asked no questions about why someone would need every lock changed at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. While they worked, I prepared Jessica's itinerary with the same care I'd once used planning our anniversary trips. The call to her parents was perhaps the most satisfying 3 minutes of my life. "Gerald, it's Mark. I need to let you know that Jessica will be coming to stay with you today. There's been an incident," I said calmly. Jessica's father was a retired Methodist minister, a man who'd raised his daughter with old-fashioned values about marriage and commitment. His wife Martha was even more traditional, the kind of woman who still believed divorce was a last resort and adultery was an unforgivable sin. What kind of incident? Gerald's voice was instantly alert, concerned. The kind that ends marriages, I replied simply. She'll explain everything when she sees you. I've already started divorce proceedings. The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. My Jessica wouldn't... Martha's voice came from the background. She'd been listening on speaker. Your Jessica did, I interrupted gently. I'm sorry you have to learn about this, but she's made her choices. She'll need somewhere to stay while the lawyers sort everything out. I hung up before they could ask more questions. Let Jessica explain to her conservative religious parents why she'd thrown away 8 years of marriage for one night with a stranger. Let her find the words to make them understand why their grandchild would now grow up in a broken home. The movers arrived at 10 a.m., 4 men with a truck large enough to relocate a small office building. I'd prepared a comprehensive list of Jessica's belongings, organized by room, complete with photos and descriptions. They worked with impressive efficiency, removing every trace of my wife from our home like she'd never existed at all. Her closet, emptied. Her vanity table, stripped bare. Her side of the bathroom, cleared down to the last bottle of nail polish. The coffee mug with her name on it that she'd used every morning for 8 years, packed away. I supervised every step, checking items off my list with mechanical precision. When one of the movers asked about the framed photos on her nightstand, pictures of us from happier times, I didn't hesitate. Those too, I said. By noon, the house looked completely different. Cleaner somehow. The movers had even vacuumed the spaces where her furniture had stood, erasing the physical impressions of her presence as thoroughly as she'd erased our marriage vows. I showered, shaved, and put on my best navy suit, the one Jessica always said made me look distinguished. Then I sat at our kitchen table with the divorce papers spread in front of me like tarot cards predicting a bitter future. The silence in the house was profound. No Jessica humming in the shower, no morning news playing from the bedroom TV, no coffee brewing automatically at 7:30 a.m. Just the quiet tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, counting down the minutes until my wife came home to discover that her entire life had been erased. At 12:30 p.m., I saw the last moving truck pull away from our driveway. At 12:35 p.m., I spotted Jessica's silver Honda turning onto our street. I positioned myself by the front window and watched her park. She moved slowly, carefully, clearly fighting a massive hangover. But there was something else in her posture, a satisfied languor that made my stomach turn. She looked like a woman who'd gotten exactly what she wanted. Jessica checked herself in the rearview mirror, running fingers through her disheveled hair, trying to make herself presentable. She had no idea that presentable was no longer relevant, that the audience she was preparing for had already rendered its verdict. She grabbed her purse, locked the car, and walked up our driveway with the confident stride of someone who believed she could explain away anything. Someone who thought 8 years of marriage meant she could survive one night of betrayal. I watched her reach into her purse for keys that would no longer work. I watched her try the first key, then the second, confusion creeping across her face. I watched her realize something was very, very wrong. When she knocked on the door of the house we'd bought together, the house where she'd planned to raise our children, the house she'd just lost forever, I was ready. I opened it wearing my best smile and holding her future in a manila envelope. "Hello, Jessica," I said.
We need to talk.
The key wouldn't work. I watched through the peephole as Jessica tried it again, jiggling the handle with growing frustration. Her confident morning-after glow was starting to crack around the edges, replaced by the first hints of genuine confusion. She knocked. 3 sharp raps that sounded different somehow, less entitled than they used to, more uncertain. When I opened the door, her smile was automatic, practiced, the same one she'd used to deflect problems our entire marriage. But it faltered when she saw my expression, when she registered that I was fully dressed at 1 p.m. on a day I'd taken off work, when she noticed the manila envelope in my hand. "What's going on?" she asked, but her voice had lost its usual command. "Why doesn't my key work?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I studied her face, looking for any trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. Her makeup was smudged but deliberate, her hair messy in an artful way that suggested she'd fixed it in someone else's bathroom. She was wearing the same dress from last night, but it looked different now. Rumpled, slightly torn at the shoulder, stained with sweat and secrets. "Here," I said, handing her the envelope. "This should explain everything." Jessica's hand shook slightly as she opened it. I watched her face change as she read the first page, confusion shifting to disbelief, disbelief to horror, horror to something approaching panic. "Divorce papers?" Her voice cracked. "Mark, what the hell is this?" "It's exactly what it looks like, Jessica. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. I want you out of my house, away from my daughter, and out of my life," I replied evenly. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language, then tried to push past me into the house. I blocked her path, gently but firmly. She wasn't coming in. Not now, not ever again. "You can't be serious," she said, but I could hear the desperation creeping in. "It was just a hall pass. You gave me permission." "I gave you nothing," I replied, my voice perfectly level. "I said nothing, which you decided meant yes." I'm correcting that misunderstanding now. Jessica's breathing was becoming rapid, shallow. The reality was starting to penetrate her hangover, but she was still fighting it. "Mark, please, think about this rationally. It was one night. One mistake. People work through these things all the time," she pleaded. "A mistake," I repeated. "Is that what you're calling it now? Because last night on the phone you sounded pretty intentional about the whole thing." Her face went white. She'd forgotten about the phone call, or maybe hoped I'd been too upset to remember it clearly. But I remembered every word, every laugh, every cruel dismissal. "I was drunk," she started. "Drunk people tell the truth, Jessica. Sober people lie to themselves about what they want. You wanted Ryan Sterling more than you wanted your marriage, your family, your daughter's stable home. Congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted," I interrupted. She tried to step closer, to use physical proximity the way she always had when we fought. But I stepped back, maintaining the distance between us like a barrier she could never cross again. "Where are my things?" The question came out as a whisper. "At your parents' house, 3 hours away in Springfield. They're waiting for your explanation," I answered. The words hit her like physical blows. I watched Jessica's knees buckle as the full scope of her situation became clear. Not only was her marriage over, but everyone would know why. Her parents, those conservative, religious parents who'd raised her to believe in commitment and fidelity. Our friends, who would inevitably choose sides. Our daughter, who would eventually be old enough to understand why Mommy didn't live with Daddy anymore. "You bastard," she breathed. "You calculated, cold-hearted bastard. How long have you been planning this?" "Since 11:47 p.m. last night," I said. "Right around the time you told me you were taking a hall pass I never gave you." Jessica crumpled then, right there on our front porch. The woman who'd strutted out of this house 12 hours earlier in her sexy dress and her confident smile became a sobbing mess in wrinkled clothes, with nowhere to go but back to the childhood bedroom she'd left behind 20 years ago. "Please," she whispered through her tears. "Please don't do this. I love you. It didn't mean anything." "If it didn't mean anything," I said quietly, "then neither does this." I started to close the door, but she grabbed the frame, forcing me to look at her one more time. "What about Emma? Are you going to destroy her life too, just to hurt me?" she demanded. That stopped me cold. Our daughter, sleeping peacefully at her grandmother's house, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. For a moment, I felt something crack in my chest, a hairline fracture in my certainty. But then I remembered Jessica's laugh on the phone, her casual dismissal of 8 years of commitment, her complete lack of concern for the family she was destroying. Emma deserved better than a mother who would trade her stable home for one night with a stranger. "I'm not the one who destroyed her life," I said. "That was you," at 11:47 p.m. last night. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt, the new deadbolt that Jessica would never have a key for. Through the window, I watched her walk back to her car, her shoulders shaking with sobs, her perfect night already becoming her worst nightmare. As she drove away toward a conversation with her parents that would define the rest of her relationships, I remained in the house we'd once shared, finally able to breathe normally for the first time in 3 weeks. The game was over. And just like Jessica had said at the dinner party, it had been easy to know exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to win. 6 months later, I can see the whole picture clearly. The divorce was finalized in May, fastest uncontested proceeding David Cox had ever handled. Jessica couldn't afford to fight it, couldn't afford a lawyer capable of challenging my evidence, couldn't afford much of anything, really. Her parents had provided a place to sleep and 3 meals a day, but their financial support came with conditions she found increasingly difficult to accept. Pray for forgiveness, her mother had told her during one of their more heated conversations, according to Jessica's sister Lisa, who called me out of misplaced loyalty to family unity. Beg God's mercy for what you've done to that good man and that innocent child, but Jessica wasn't built for begging. She'd found a job at a department store cosmetics counter, moved into a studio apartment across town, and tried to rebuild her life with the same confident determination she'd once used to destroy it. The problem was that small towns have long memories, and our social circle had already rendered its verdict. Sarah, her supposed best friend, had been the first to distance herself. "I can't believe she actually did it," Sarah told everyone who would listen. "I thought she was just talking big, you know? Like fantasy talk. I never thought she'd actually throw away her marriage for some celebrity she met at a concert." The story spread like wildfire through our community, enhanced and embellished with each retelling until Jessica became a cautionary tale rather than a real person. The woman who traded 8 years of marriage for one night with a stranger, the mother who chose a rock star over her daughter's stability, the wife who destroyed everything good in her life for a fantasy. I kept the house, of course. Kept my savings account, my retirement funds, my reputation intact. Our mutual friends rallied around me with casseroles and offers to babysit Emma, treating me like a wounded hero who'd survived a terrible accident, which in many ways I suppose I had. Emma adjusted better than I'd feared. Children are resilient, and at 7 years old, she accepted my explanation that Mommy had made some bad choices and needed to live somewhere else for a while. She sees Jessica every other weekend, court-ordered, supervised visits that take place at a neutral location because I successfully argued that my ex-wife's studio apartment wasn't suitable for a child. Those visits are awkward affairs. According to the court-appointed monitor, Jessica tries too hard, brings too many gifts, makes too many promises about the future when they'll be together more. Emma is polite but distant, already protective of the new stability in her life, already learning not to trust promises from the woman who used to tuck her in every night. I'm dating again, carefully, methodically, with the same attention to detail I brought to dismantling my marriage. When women ask about my divorce, and they always do, I have a simple, devastating response. My ex-wife made a choice, I tell them. I never elaborate. I don't need to. The phrase carries enough weight to end that line of questioning while establishing me as the wronged party, the man who was betrayed by someone he trusted completely. It's both true and strategically perfect. Sometimes, late at night in the bedroom Jessica and I once shared, I allow myself to wonder if my response was too extreme. If I should have tried counseling, forgiveness, some kind of reconciliation for Emma's sake. But then I remember that phone call, the giddy excitement in Jessica's voice, her casual dismissal of our family, her complete lack of remorse, and the doubt fades. She called me last month. I let it go to voicemail. "Mark, please, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need you to understand. It really was just one night. Just one stupid, meaningless night, and I've lost everything because of it. That's not justice. That's cruelty," her voice pleaded through the recording. I deleted the message without finishing it. Justice and cruelty often look the same from different angles, and Jessica had taught me that some betrayals can't be forgiven, only answered with equal force. She'd wanted one perfect night with the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. I'd given her a lifetime to remember what that night cost her. Every morning when she wakes up alone in her studio apartment, every weekend when she sees Emma for 3 supervised hours, every time someone in town whispers and points, she gets to relive her choice. As I finish writing this account, this confession, this justification, this record of how a marriage dies in a single phone call, I realize something that would probably disturb the man I used to be. I feel no guilt about what I did. No regret about the completeness of my revenge. Jessica taught me that marriage vows are just words, and words only have the power you give them. She said it was just a game. I suppose it was, and I won. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.